Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good late morning, depending on where you are. Thanks so much for being here. We will give people a moment to jump on and get settled in. The chat box should be open if you want to say a quick hello and let us know where you're joining in from today, and we will get started in a moment. And thanks to those of you who have kicked us off already. I see Kiara from Ohio. Thanks for being here. I see Julie in Washington, Kenneth from New Orleans. Nice. Isuda from Toronto. Nice to have some Canadian representation today. I see Oklahoma's in the chat, New York, Illinois, Long Beach, Wyoming, Annapolis. Have to shout out my fellow Marylanders. All right, great. Yeah, so keep it coming. So we will go ahead and get things kicked off here. So like I mentioned, if you're just joining us, we are just saying hello in the chat. Just let us know who you are, where you're coming from, your connection to Safe Routes. The chat will be open throughout the whole session, so feel free to engage and share ideas and resources. We want to make sure that we spend this time connecting with each other too. So please feel free to do so. We'll also be recording this webinar, so if you missed anything or need links to any resources, we'll make sure that you get all those resources and a recording of the presentation and the slide deck. So that will be coming your way after the webinar wraps up today. So thank you all for joining us for our last series of the Walk, Ride, and Roll webinar series. And today we're talking all about high school engagement. So engaging older students in Safe Routes projects, both Safe Routes to School and just other Safe Routes projects in general. So I know this is a topic that we get asked about a lot. So we're excited to kind of share some of our strategies and best practices with you all. And hopefully this is the start of many conversations about engaging older youth and high school students in Safe Routes to School. So those of you who might be new to our organization, we're a Safe Routes Partnership, and we are a national organization that works to advance safe walking and rolling and biking, both to school, but also to everyday destinations, like parks, libraries, grocery stores, just places where people need to be, and really thinking about improving the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, abilities, disabilities, and building healthy, thriving communities. So if you're new, welcome. And if you have been with us before, it's nice to see you all again. So I'm Corey Johnson. I'm a program and engagement manager here at Safe Routes Partnership. I'm based in DC, but I'm joining you from beautiful sunny South Carolina today. So I know I saw North Carolina. I don't know if I saw South Carolina represented here in the chat. So yeah, hello from South Carolina. Again, thank you all so much for being here. Continue to share who you are, your connection to Safe Routes. And yeah, it's just nice to see people from all over being a part of our chat today. So thanks so much for being here. So to get started, I usually start with like a little poll to get a sense of who you are and your experience working with high school students on Safe Routes projects. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll here. And again, feel free to continue saying hello in the chat box. And I do see a shout out from Columbia, South Carolina. So thanks for the South Carolina representation. I appreciate it. Okay, so our first question is about high school engagement, just in general. So I'd love to know if you've worked with high school students on Safe Routes projects, whether it's a Safe Routes to School project or program or something else related to active transportation, just to get a sense of your experiences working with this age group. So I will give you all a moment to put in your answers. And while I'm doing that, I'll also say that we do have both the chat box open and the Q&A box open. So if you have questions, it'll be great to put them in the Q&A box, just so we can keep that a bit more organized. The chat usually tends to be really full. So questions in the Q&A box, if you can, and just general discussion can go in the chat box. That's fine. And we'll try to manage both throughout the session today. And I'm also joined by Michelle and Diane from the partnership, who will also be in the chat box and the Q&A box answering questions. So it'll be the three of us today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and share our results. So yeah, it seems like there are some people who've have experience working with high school students on Safe Routes projects, but a lot of people who it's kind of like your first, dive into high school engagement and youth engagement. So I'm glad that you all are really interested in this topic and are hopefully looking forward to working with older students on Safe Routes to School projects. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop sharing the results here. And so I'm curious, for those of you who have worked with high school students and older youth on Safe Routes projects, what projects you've done, or if you have something in the works, what are you planning? So I'm just curious what projects you worked on together. Did you do a Safe Routes to School project? Did you do a video contest? Do you have some sort of interesting projects planned for the future? So those of you who have that experience with working with high school students, if you want to share in the chat box what you worked on together, that would be great, just so we get a sense of what you all have done or plan to do. So thanks, Doug. I see that you've worked on a walking school bus program. Great. Creating walking and bike clubs at select high schools, walk to school day events, video contests, surveys, working with high schoolers and with critical mass or younger as volunteers. So high school students can also be volunteers for projects. Great. I saw somebody earlier mention something about funding, told that their funding didn't cover work with high school, but it looks like that has changed. Yes, so federal funding for Safe Routes to School now includes funding for high school projects. Originally, high schools weren't eligible, but that has since changed. So there is some new funding that's available for high school Safe Routes to School programs, which is really exciting and part of why we wanted to do this webinar today. So there should be more funding available than there has been in the past. Okay, so it seems like there's a nice mix of experience in the chat box, both with working with high school students and implementing non-infrastructure projects, so things like video contests, walk and roll to school day, some education projects, and then even working with some high school students on infrastructure projects, whether it's having them advocate for infrastructure, participate in walk audits, kind of help with some of the infrastructure design elements. So yeah, I'm glad that there's a range of high school experience that you all have. And again, continue to share in the chat. We'd love to hear from you all as well. And I have one more quick poll before we move on. And I'd like to know for this one, what are your biggest barriers to engaging high school students and older youth? These barriers might be just general barriers to engagement or something that's specific to high school students. So is it just connecting with high schools? Is it just lack of interest from the students? Lack of experience working with this age group? That can definitely be, a barrier. Just time or resources. Like, well, it's great that Safe Routes to School is expanding to high school. It's like one additional thing on your plate. So that might be overwhelming. Lack of examples or models about what types of collaborations with high school students you can do. Do you just kind of, need some ideas or some guidance around that? Or is it just something else? And if it's something else, feel free to put that in the chat box as well. So I'll keep this open for another few seconds. All right, so I'll go ahead and 5 seconds, get your last comments in. Okay. So as far as barriers, it's a really mixed bag. So for some of you, it's connecting with schools, just lack of interest in the students, maybe lack of time. It looks like a lot of you, it seems like a lot of you are looking for examples or models of what this looks like. We'll cover some in this session, but it seems even just based off of the chat, there are plenty of people who also have a lot of experience and examples of high school partnerships. So even if I don't know something today, I'm sure that you all in the chat box do. So feel free to, again, to share your resources, your links, connect with one another. Oftentimes you all, you have the on the ground experience and might see a lot more that I'm able to see. So I think that between all of us today, we should be able to give you some great examples. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing this and just take a little look at the chat again and just see what other barriers might be coming up when it comes to high school engagement. So prioritizing routes, just working with teenagers who really enjoy driving. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Let's see, there are a few current grant applicants who are planning to include high school. What does that look like? An unwillingness of, maybe a DOT to make safety changes by high school campuses, lack of interest, hard for recruiting. Vaping prevention is a higher priority. So we'll actually talk about ways to align youth engagement with some other priority areas. I didn't think about vaping, but that's actually a really good one. So I'll add that to my list as well. Just finding the time, again, funding. So yeah, so while I don't think that we will, be able to solve every barrier today, I do think we'll be able to talk about some of these. And again, hopefully you all in the chat too will be able to share some of your ideas and solutions for working with older youth on Safe Routes to School projects. So I know that for me, it's been a while since I've been in high school. So sometimes when I think about youth engagement, I can kind of feel like this, kind of like the older person who's like, all right, teenagers, let's do Safe Routes to School projects. So that lack of interest or kind of like being able to create those connections, can be a barrier. So I totally understand that. But I also think that we can still work together. So, even if you're somebody who, is trying to look for ways to connect with young people and engage and make this relevant. I think that there's still opportunities to do this in a way that's really successful and responsive and effective, and that actually addresses the safety concerns of young people who are traveling around their communities. So it can be done. If you feel like that, like that person who just cannot relate, I hear you, but we can still do great things with high school students. So when we think about, go back a bit. So when we think about engaging high school students in Safe Routes to School, this can look like lots of different things. So you all had a lot of really great examples in the chat box. Some of these, you've actually mentioned. So having students lead walk and roll to school day events, having, video PSA contests, air quality awareness campaigns, thinking about like the climate justice angle, which is another issue area I'll talk about a bit later. Vision Zero Youth Councils and ambassador programs, having students participate in a Safe Routes to School task force, inviting students to a town council or city council meeting to advocate for a sidewalk improvement or crosswalk project. I have an example of that a bit later too. And again, you all put a lot of other ideas in the chat box, but if you have others, feel free to add them. So it's really thinking about, like what your community needs, what students are interested in, what they might want to focus on, and, really guiding your program and project activities around what young people actually care about. So when we think about what young people care about, youth actually do care a lot about safe walking and biking and riding and rolling. So while it might seem like, there are a lot of students or young people who want to drive or like to drive, there are actually a lot of high school students who do care about active transportation and having those different travel options. So this is from a CDC research from 2022 that says that, motor vehicle crashes are, still a huge safety concern and issue among teens. So while we're talking about active transportation today, We do know that young people are still, deeply impacted by motor vehicle crashes and serious injuries coming from car crashes. So all this is still very relevant and very timely, whether students are driving or walking or biking or rolling. We also know that actually, even though there are young people who do like to drive, teens are also getting their driver's license at a much lower rate than previous generations. So, I know that I've talked to several young people in my life who, are just not interested or don't feel the need to get a driver's license as soon as they turn, whatever age you need to turn in order to get your license or your permit. Again, this definitely varies across communities, across income levels. It really depends on, who you're talking to and who's kind of in your direct circle. But we do kind of see that, that shift from previous generations. So what does this all mean? Knowing that, road safety is still a priority issue for young people, and that transportation choice is becoming more of a thing. We know that we're seeing an increased interest in safe walking, biking, rolling, scooting, includes skateboards, scooters as a part of this too. An increased interest in public transit. And I'll talk a little bit about that later as well, but we also know there are some young people who, are interested in learning how to ride a subway or use the bus. And also an increased interest in climate justice. So I feel like younger generation is kind of like the climate justice generation in a lot of ways. It's definitely a really strong youth-led movement. And so there are a lot of young people who are thinking about, like their own transportation choices impacting the environment. And those of you who might not be familiar with the term climate justice, it just recognizes that the disproportionate impacts of climate change on low-income communities and communities of color around the world. So, climate justice is something you'll probably hear come up. Environmental justice is kind of aligned with that as well, and social justice. So that's something that young people actually care about a lot, and it's impacting their daily lives. So we also know, again, because of these changing trends in teen drivers and still, the high rates of young people being impacted by car crashes, a lot of young people are actually exploring more alternative transportation options. So things like scooters, e-bikes, skateboarding, roller skating, and rollerblading is back. I don't know if it ever went away. I just see a lot more roller skates and rollerblades than I have seen in the past, even ride sharing. So again, there are some young people who, want or need to use a ride share to get around their community. So I think that young people like to have choices when it comes to transportation. And so incorporating some of these e-mobility solutions is also an important part of thinking about a Safe Routes program or project for high school students. We also know that, I guess Gen Z, is what we're talking about today. They're a digital generation, so there are more options to connect and make an impact online. So while it's great to do things in person, and we still want to do that, we also need to make sure we're thinking about ways for people to engage via social media or just digitally. And the youth who you're working with will have all of the tools and knowledge and expertise about how to do that effectively. So those online options can be really impactful as well. And this also means that there's just more opportunities to partner with youth. So whether it's a Safe Routes to School project or a Vision Zero program, just general bike ped advocacy, even placemaking projects. There are students who are, getting involved in, colorful crosswalk art or tactical urbanism or other types of placemaking initiatives. There are a lot of opportunities here. And again, with the new Safe Routes to School funding, there are more resources for you to explore these opportunities. So it doesn't just have to be, a traditional Safe Routes to School program. You can incorporate some of these other things into your programs and projects as well. And I'll also keep in mind, since this was mentioned a few times in the chat, that teens are still driving, young people are still driving. That has not gone away. And there are actually some youth who might still, want or need to drive. We know that not all communities have the infrastructure to support walking, biking, and rolling, or that don't have access to transit. I've talked to a lot of people in rural communities where a school campus might be really far away. So, students do have to make a long drive to school or take the bus. So it's important to consider too that driving is still a part of youth culture and needs to be addressed, and that young people actually do care about safe driving behaviors. despite despite the motor crash rates that I mentioned, or despite some behaviors that you might see, a lot of young people actually care about keeping themselves safe, but also keeping other people safe who are walking and riding and rolling. We talked with a group of high school students a few years ago. They were new drivers, and they were actually saying that, their main experiences in life had been as pedestrians, as people walking and rolling. And so as they were driving, they were kind of like driving, but through the lens of a pedestrian, because that was what their main experience had been. So their main concern was making sure that people who were walking were safe as they were driving behind the wheel. So that was like an interesting, perspective from young people when it comes to driving behaviors in general. So I just wanted to keep that in mind as well as you think about transportation options for high school students. And I'll also say, it's okay and important to be honest about your ability to work with high school students. This might not be your area of interest or expertise, or you might have a lot of experience with this age group. And that's okay. I think that working with high school students and older youth definitely involves a certain skill set and a certain level of expertise and experience and confidence. And if that's not you, if it might be, this might be something you need to work on with a partner or a different collaborator, or even like hand off some of these roles to somebody else who does have that expertise and who can do that type of engagement, that's also okay. And if it's not you, or if it's you working in partnership with somebody else, maybe there is a dedicated high school Safe Routes to School program coordinator or contact. Or maybe you partner with a local youth organization or a sports team or a member of school staff, like a club advisor, or even a coach who kind of already has the connection to students. Maybe it's a library, or Parks and Rec department, or another youth organization in your community. And there's also the social media piece. So like I mentioned before, exploring options to, connect and engage online is another great way to kind of think about engaging high school students and working with young people. So I did want to put that out there too, that, it's not always easy for all of us to work with high school students, and that's okay, but there are people and partners who have that expertise who can help you and guide you through that process. So I'm going to pause for a moment just to see if there are any questions in the chat here. And again, yes, we're recording everything, and we will have the recording and the slide deck available for you all. So keep an eye out for a follow-up email from me. Okay, I'm going to keep it moving. So the next thing we talk about with all of our Safe Routes to School programs is really thinking about the school community, getting to know the school community. So we do this with elementary schools and high school and middle schools, but we can do the same thing with high schools. Obviously, the high school structure might be a bit larger, a bit more complex, depending on the school community. But those really like basic elements of Safe Routes to School still apply for high school programs, and that's something that you can do as you kind of start to embark on this journey. So where are you working and who are you working with? I know that schools are difficult. It can be difficult to contact. I know that capacity is maxed out for a lot of schools these days, but thinking about high school programs especially, it still is important to have that school contact. So is it an administrator? Maybe. Is it a teacher? A PE teacher, an environmental science teacher, thinking about the connection between transportation and climate change. Are there opportunities to do some curriculum integration there? Is there a digital media or technology teacher, health teacher, a student advisor, or is it a coach or the head of a student club or a librarian? But who can be that that person on school campus who you can, just connect with about, program logistics, seeking approval on things. It is important to still have that staff contact in place. But again, that'll depend on the school that you're working with and who has the capacity and who is available. These are just a few ideas. If you have others in the chat box, feel free to put them there too. But creating that first staff contact and first staff connection is really important. And I will say, parents and caregivers could also play a part of this as well. I know that parent engagement kind of drops off as students get older, but there are still plenty of parents and caregivers who are involved in high school as well. So that could also be another avenue for you all to think about. So when you think about what it is that young people actually want and what their priorities are when it comes to safe routes to school, but also just like their lives in general. These are a few things that we're kind of seeing and hearing, both from you, so safe routes people, but also just in general from young people. So for some youth, one priority when it comes to transportation is actually independence. So that ability to be able to travel around their community without a parent, without supervision. I think that in the past, independence used to really be linked to having a car and that car culture, being able to just, go and drive off and do your own thing. But increasingly, we're seeing more young people who want to be able to walk and bike and roll around their communities and have that independence to travel around as they would like to. Traffic safety is still a priority. I think that young people are still deeply impacted by traffic safety, road safety. So that is still a key priority area. Also personal safety and school safety, whether it's, safety from crime or street harassment or gun violence. That's also a huge priority area for, young people, especially when it comes to like school campus safety and security. So that's another thing to think about and look out for. Climate justice, like I mentioned, mental health. So having opportunities for people to, young people to walk and ride and roll with their friends and kind of have that social connectedness piece can be another angle for safe routes to school. And I'm also curious to see if there's anything else in the chat box that you all have mentioned. I know that somebody mentioned vaping earlier, which is, another really important priority area for young people. So, is there a possibility to connect, that health piece to transportation? Sure, you can think about what that might look like. Bullying. Yep. So again, kind of like that, personal safety, personal relationships. Okay, so if you all have any others, feel free to add them into the chat box. But the point is that there are lots of opportunities to, align some of these priorities with the Safe Routes program. And so when you kind of think about, youth priorities and how you can ask young people in your community what they care about, especially in a school setting, first it's important to tell them, why you're asking. So why you care, why this is important. And then kind of think about some avenues for getting that information. So can you do some outreach tabling at a high school, at a lunch period, at an extracurricular event? After school, is that an option? Can you do a survey or a poll? I saw some people said that they did a few surveys earlier in the chat. Can you do a comment board? Just like put up a big sheet of paper, in a hallway, in a cafeteria. Again, maybe it's at an extracurricular event and just get some, kind of like free form crowdsourcing. Can you talk to school staff or even like a student-led club, student government association? Maybe there is some sort of transportation club. Is there a bike club, skate club, sports team? What are those already existing structures and groups in place at a school that you can kind of tap into? Or again, is it social media? Is it posting something? Is it posting an online poll or survey and doing some social media outreach? So again, this will really depend on the community that you're working with, the students you're working with, and how they like to, communicate. But I think that really being able to tap into what young people care about in your community is really important. So you can actually go ahead and align those priorities. So if your priority is not, vaping or climate justice or gun violence, maybe safe routes to school can still be some type of solution. So while that might not be your exact area of interest or priority area, how can you align safe routes to school to that movement? Maybe talking about, health in general, or climate justice in general, and kind of slot safe routes to school or safe routes projects into that larger priority area. And, you can do that in a number of different ways. So maybe it's just providing some guidance or advice, around implementing safe routes projects, implementing active transportation projects. Maybe it's, helping out with program materials or just sharing information about how, active transportation actually helps like lower car emissions or improves air quality and can be a part of the climate change conversation. So can you be a vehicle to share information with people? Or can you be somebody who can connect young people to decision makers? So high school student, they might not be connected to, a city council or a town council or a local agency, but you might have those connections and be able to, facilitate, those types of interactions. So whether it's helping to set up a meeting or testifying, on an upcoming project, or seeking permission to do a temporary demonstration project. How can you kind of connect teens to the decision makers who are in their towns and cities and counties? So there are lots of things you can do to try to align those priorities. Now I'll pause again, just take a look at the chat here. I saw somebody else just say that middle school and high school age kids want to go to and from school with their friends, and has a huge influence on travel behavior. So we know that with this age group, especially that, young people and, peers and friends can be the biggest influencers. So how can you use Safe Routes to School as an opportunity to talk about, this is a chance for you all to, connect with your friends, travel to school together with your friends, keep each other safe while doing so. So that, that friends and peers angle is another really great one to think about when you're trying to frame Safe Routes to School for high school students. The next thing I want to talk about is just letting young people lead. So I know that typically for Safe Routes to School that, it's the people implementing the program, but you might be the ones who are out leading every activity, sending newsletters, gathering materials, kind of like designing programs and implementing them. The great thing about working with high school students is that not only do they, just have interest in these topics, they can also do a lot when it comes to leading activities on their own. So in some ways it's nice because like you can take some of this off of your plate if done well and done thoughtfully. So I wanted to talk a bit about what letting young people lead actually looks like. So it actually could look like, maybe you as a Safe Routes practitioner playing more of an advisor or support role. So you might not be the ones who are like directly implementing everything, but you're somebody who could be, advising a larger project, just being that support that young people still need. They might not necessarily need you to be implementing everything, but knowing that there's like a trusted adult who can, who they can go to for guidance, for support is really helpful and helps kind of increase their confidence and ability to do what they want to do effectively. So it could also be, used directly implementing their own Safe Routes projects. So whether that's, organizing a walk and roll to school day, or organizing a walking school bus, or maybe doing something for younger students. I think somebody mentioned earlier a bit about having high school students volunteer for different projects. So, can young people actually just implement their own projects and ideas? And again, you can be, kind of like that advisor, that support. And this really actually allows young people to be the Safe Routes champions. So again, usually Safe Routes champions are adult Safe Routes practitioners, school staff, parents, caregivers. High school students can actually be those champions. I'll also say, especially for like the younger students, so elementary and middle school students, to see a high school student who's like still kind of close to their age, but like an older kid, do something cool, like walk or roll to school, does kind of help those younger students. It gives the younger students somebody to look up to. So thinking about kind of like that, peer influence piece, high school students can be great Safe Routes champions and ambassadors, and really influence younger students to walk and roll and bike to school. You can also, provide resources and materials. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's just, giving young people what they actually need in order to implement the projects they want to implement. And then lastly, just listening more. So I mentioned youth priorities earlier, really sitting and listening and thinking about what it is that high school students, young people actually need, both for Safe Routes, but also just, in their daily lives to lead, a healthy and thriving life. And then find ways for Safe Routes to be aligned with those priorities. So I'm going to get into a few examples now, since you are asking about what does this actually look like? What are some examples? What are some models? And again, if you have, resources, links, feel free to share them in the chat box. So the first example, I think I saw Nicole, I think I saw you on here earlier. So you're very familiar with this. This is Atlanta Students Advocating for Pedestrians, or ASAP for short. This is a student-led organization in Atlanta. This organization was started by a group of students after the death of one of their classmates. She was biking through an intersection and was killed. And so that really brought a lot of awareness around the street design of this intersection, and the students of the school really wanting to make some serious changes when it comes to road design in Atlanta. So this is a student-led organization. It advocates for infrastructure improvements, but also just a lot of other things when it comes to road safety in Atlanta. And also supports their local Safe Routes to School programs. So Atlanta has a really great middle school tactical urbanism project that I'm not sure if it's officially opened yet, but they're creating a walking and biking lane. And so the students at ASAP are helping to support that project as well. And again, kind of like being those youth ambassadors, for Safe Routes to School. They also regularly engage with elected officials and local leaders. So these are young people who, have gone and advocated for infrastructure projects at their school and in other parts of the city. And again, because they have that lived experience of, the death of a classmate and just their everyday experiences of, trying to walk or roll or drive to school, they can connect with decision makers on a different level and say, this is what my trip to school is actually like, or this is how it's really impacting my peers or my friends. We need to do better. We need to, we need to make change. So that really authentic student voice is something that that students in ASAP have been really effective with when it comes to pushing for that larger road design change. And again, in this presentation, anything that's hyperlinked will be linked in the slide deck. So I have links to articles and websites and more information about each of these groups. If you can't find something, it is linked in the presentation. So don't worry if you miss something, I will get it to you. Another program is Alameda County Safe Routes to School. So those of you who are at our Safe Routes to School Summit back in the fall might have gone to the presentation that Alameda County did about their program. So Alameda County actually has over a decade of high school programming when it comes to Safe Routes to School, and including a dedicated high school Safe Routes to School site coordinator who is on campus and somebody who has that expertise when it comes to working with high school students. And they have a really big emphasis on transportation independence, including how to use transit, and on climate justice as well. So actually in this little flyer here on the side, you can see that they have a youth task force, and climate change is all over this flyer. So you can see they actually say, are you concerned about how travel habits are contributing to climate change? So that climate angle and that framework is something that's worked really well for this group. So again, that might be something that works in your community, but this has been really helpful for the group here in Alameda County. They're out in the Bay Area, like the Oakland area. And they also do a really cool, they have a great travel training programs. They actually teach kids not only how to walk, bike, and roll, but also how to use transit. And I'll show you a quick example of one of their transit materials. They have their youth task force and their Reboot Your Commute program. So again, thinking about students commuting to school, what does that look like? And showing lots of different opportunities to travel to school without using a car. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick pause here and share my other screen. Hopefully you all can see this. Okay. So this is actually an example from Alameda County where students created their own bus guide. So how to actually use public transit. I think there are a lot of young people who are a bit nervous about using transit if they haven't done it before. Even adults are nervous sometimes. So they went ahead and created their own guide about how to use the bus. So I'll just show a very quick snippet of their wheel bus ride guide. And this was done by students.
Hey, first time riding the bus?
Yeah.
That's cool. You have a bus veteran here to help you. I'm Alex. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, how do you think you're gonna pay?
I don't know.
You don't know? Follow me. All right, so now as you enter the bus, there are 3 types of way to pay. You can just pay with money, give her the bus ticket, or you can use your Clipper card, scan in, as we're doing here. Take this, and now we go onto the bus. Oh, looks like my friend Ryan has made himself a home here.
Oh, hey, what's up,
man?
Alex? Oh, you're showing another rookie around, Alex?
Oh, you know, the usual, the usual.
Yeah.
Why don't you show us some of the features on the bus, man?
Reclining seats. Whoa.
Wow.
And guess what? I'm getting a little bit of juice in my phone over here.
Double wow.
Okay, so again, that's just like a really quick snippet of a student created video about how to ride the bus. And, you know, you can do these types of videos, not just with bus, maybe it's, you know, how to get an electric scooter, how to bike, how to walk safely. But the cool thing is that, you know, it really is geared towards young people. So, you know, there are young people who are in the video, they created the video, they're talking the way the young people talk, but they're also still like providing us really practical tips for using transit, like how do I pay for transit? Or, oh, I can charge my phone here. Or how do I, you know, where do I sit? Who do I talk to? Just those practical things that, you know, can really help boost somebody's confidence when it comes to using transit. And again, this doesn't, you don't have to use transit for your, you know, for your informational video. You could also, you know, use something else. It really depends on what works for, you know, for your community. Somebody asked if this was a contest or an assignment. I don't know, but I can ask. I don't know if anybody from Alameda County is on and can jump in the chat. But, you know, again, that really just kind of highlights, you know, like what young people care about, being able to ride transit independently. There's the climate justice piece with using transit, and then just being able to kind of like get that confidence to travel around. So I'd highly recommend reaching out to or connecting with Alameda County if you have any questions about high school programming. They've been at this for a long time and have a lot of really great resources and experiences when it comes to running high school programs. Another group I wanted to talk about was NOISE, which actually stands for National Organizations for Youth Safety. I know that some of you might already be connected with them or have projects supported by them. This is a great group that really addresses health and safety from a lot of different angles. So road safety, mobility justice, personal safety, and mental health. So kind of in aligning lots of different priority areas. And they work with both teens and young adults. So it's not just high school students. They work with young people in their 20s as well. And their whole idea is really about shifting the conversation and power to youth. So, you know, giving tools, giving youth the resources and the support needed to actually let them lead these conversations and changes. And it's also like very inclusive and diverse. They do a lot of work thinking about, you know, the priority areas of youth of color as well. So they're another great group to connect with when you're trying to think about how to actually let young people lead. And the last example is a great walking school bus program that was done in Pryor Creek, Oklahoma, where students received training from local experts, city staff, the school district, and Cherokee Nation to actually lead a walking school bus program. I'm not sure if this group got service learning hours. I know there are like lots of other youth programs where they do offer service learning hours for you know, helping with some of these events. So that can also be another way to, you know, kind of pull young people in and, you know, create some sort of incentive saying there, you know, our service learning hours or community service hours available, and that Safe Routes projects can be a great way to get those hours. The next thing is to really connect to what teens care about. So you mentioned this a bit earlier about all these different priority areas and things that young people actually care about. Including walking, biking, and rolling, but also other topics as well. So this is an example of a student group in Porterville, California. It's a smaller community that has a real lack of active transportation infrastructure, and a lot of concerns when it comes to climate and sustainability that's related to energy, waste, water, and transportation. So these students are part of a school-based program or school district-based program where they did walk audits and surveys and community engagement around sustainability concerns and transportation in the hopes of using that information to develop a citywide Safe Routes to School program. So again, they kind of like took that climate angle, but use that information to, you know, give back to city officials and local agency staff to really make the case for why infrastructure investments are important and why there needs to be a citywide Safe Routes to School program. So again, just another way to kind of connect the climate piece with the safe routes piece and really use that to make the case for active transportation. And young people are a great way to do that. And they designed their own walk audit tool. They did their own surveys. They did their own community engagement. And so they're really successful in connecting with students and families, both in the walk audit, but also in that survey distribution process. So that is a climate example. Another example, these are two rainbow crosswalk examples from New England. So the first one is Ellsworth, Maine. Their Gender and Sexuality Diversity Alliance wanted to create a rainbow crosswalk during COVID as a part of Pride Month. And so they wrote up a proposal with their club advisor, presented to City Council. It was actually rejected at first. City Council said that they were concerned about safety. I think there were some students who weren't sure if the real safety concern was that it was about safety or is that it was supporting their Gender and Sexuality Diversity Alliance. But eventually they were able to get enough support from students, staff, community members. They really came out and advocated for this project and were able to get their crosswalk approved. And I think that they did one and are in the works of doing others as well. So again, thinking about like these issues that young people care about when it comes to gender and sexuality, that can be incorporated into Safe Routes project as well. The other example is also in New England, Massachusetts. This was another example of young people wanting to create some sort of demonstrative display of pride and also increase safety in front of their school building. Their school Human Rights Coalition partnered with their Black Student Union and other school groups to do a rainbow crosswalk in front of their school campus. And they also got a lot of support from community members, the superintendent. And again, it has both that the safety piece and also the larger message about being an inclusive community. I will say just a quick plug for asphalt art. For if any of you are kind of running into those situations where people say this isn't safe or we have safety concerns, there's a great asphalt art study that was done by Bloomberg Foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropies, that talks a lot about the safety of asphalt art, and they actually have Asphalt Art Initiative grants that are open right now through June 12th. So if you're interested in, kind of exploring asphalt art, I will link to the grant application and more details in the presentation. So just a quick plug for that program as well. And Massachusetts Safe Routes School also has another really great pop-up demonstration guide that features some work from high school students too. And then of course there are teen driver programs. So again, we know that young people are still driving. Are there opportunities for you to partner with a teen driver program to really show that youth are multimodal? Young drivers actually do care about safe walking, biking, and rolling. How can you incorporate some active transportation elements into teen driver programs? I don't know if anybody on here has had those types of partnerships, but just another opportunity to think about, where young people are and helping to spread active transportation safety messages in driving programs as well, because that's super important. And then lastly, just going digital. So like I mentioned, this is a digital generation and young people are online. Montgomery County Safe Routes to School, they have a really great Vision Zero Ambassadors program where they do involve young people in education and engineering projects. They can also earn service learning hours. And they also have a really great heads up, phones down video contest that's been around for a few years. I will say students look forward to it every year. There are always hundreds of submissions. I'm always super impressed by what kids are coming up with. People are, composing their own music and adding special effects. It's a really amazing display of both safety messaging, but also just creativity when it comes to how to spread these safety messages. So I do have some links in on the slide for both the Vision Zero Ambassadors program, which is part of the county's Vision Zero program, and this heads up, phones down video contest. But it kind of has become like a marquee event for high school students in Montgomery County, and it's been really successful and just continues to grow in popularity. Massachusetts Safe Routes to School, they also have a youth ambassador program and a road safety video contest. So again, another way to go digital and spread safety messages that way. They also have a really great car-free campus day initiative, and I'm going to go ahead and just share So they have like this really great guide about how to plan a car-free campus day. So it's basically a one-day event where schools commit to using safe and sustainable transportation. So again, there's kind of like, there's the climate piece with going car free. It's celebrated during Earth Month, and they have just like a step-by-step for how schools can, lead a car free campus event. And they also have a few digital engagement examples as a part of their initiative as well. So yeah, opportunities to go online and connect with young people there. And then lastly, this is a really cool example out of Canada. I'm in Ontario. This was a small community that got a placemaking grant as a part of like a neighborhood revitalization project. And so they had students create an app to basically like animate their local trails with some local and natural history. So you can like take a walk on the trail and go on the app and then hear stories about, some of the local landmarks, natural histories. There's like a whole like ecological learning piece to the app as well, but it's also related to trail connectivity and walking and biking, and then a larger initiative of really bringing the community together around their main streets. So it was like a huge community-wide collaboration. But the young people actually, they were the youth developers for the app. It's a real app available on app stores. So it was another example of being able to take a placemaking opportunity and involve young people in that process. I'll just quickly go to looking ahead, and then I will jump into the chat box here. But just, again, what does this mean? We know that there's more funding available. There are also opportunities to explore these other funding areas around climate justice, health and well-being in general, mental health, technology. Again, somebody mentioned vaping earlier. Is there, a way to kind of combine, some of the transportation initiatives with initiatives around vaping or tobacco use? What does that look like when you think about overall physical health? So that might be another area to kind of draw some connections. There are also other partners you can explore beyond schools. So Local Wise do a lot of work with young people. Can you tap into some of their programs? Libraries have youth programs, sports teams, civic organizations, arts programs. Just see who's in your community and who might want to partner and help with high school programs. I'll also say it's really important that we think about uplifting young people of color, especially young people of color might also have their own set of safety priorities when it comes to road safety, personal safety, even things like alternative enforcement methods. What does that look like? And these young people who, have been and often are at the front of a lot of these, youth movements, whether it's climate justice or gun violence, and who often have that lived experience and expertise to help advance racial equity. And with equity being one of the E's, that's something that's always top of mind for us. So how can you partner with and uplift youth of color? And then also just exploring e-mobility that you talked about, skateboarding, scooters. How can you partner with Parks and Rec, or even have teens create their own educational materials around skateboard safety or scooter safety? What does that look like? Embracing other forms of movement. So it's not just walking, biking, and rolling, but dance, yoga, sports, skating. How are young people moving around their communities, moving around their spaces? The opportunities to incorporate that, and movement's just a lot of fun. And then lastly, climate justice and climate in general will continue to be a topic, a pressing topic, especially for young people. So I feel like we're going to continue to hear a lot about climate, and thinking about ways to incorporate climate into your program can be another great way to keep Safe Routes to School really relevant, as we move forward and as your programs progress. So I know I just kind of ran through the end, but I did want to take a few minutes to look at our Q&A box here. Are there any samples for outreach materials like posters that have been designed for high school or middle school students? So you'll see some linked in the resources that I put in the slide deck. I'm not sure you're talking about outreach programs, outreach materials for like getting students to come to a meeting, or for just Safe Routes to School in general. Actually, the ones from Alameda County and Massachusetts Safe Routes to School, they have some really great ones. There are also opportunities for high school students to like design their own posters. If there's a school art club or digital media club, again, a great way to kind of bring in young people. You might be able to get some service learning hours, designing a flyer. So if there's an opportunity to partner that way, I'd also make that suggestion as well, even a local arts group. But I will see if I can link to any others in my follow-up materials, but there are some in the presentation slide deck. Any examples of engagement of high school students in rural communities? So again, the one that I pointed out for Massachusetts, Safe Routes to School, they do a lot of work in rural communities in rural Massachusetts. There are also a lot of rural communities that do, kind of like these walk at school, roll at school projects, knowing that there are young people who are coming from far distances, either on the bus or driving, where, like walking or rolling to school might not be an option. Are there opportunities to walk and roll at school, early public service campaigns at school, or do things digitally? So those are the ones that I can think of. If you have any other questions about rural programming, I think that Massachusetts, I'm not sure if anybody from Massachusetts Safe Routes to School is on, might have some other examples of what high school students in rural communities are working on. I'd also say for rural communities, like I mentioned earlier, just ask young people what it is that they care about and what it is that they, that they need. There are a lot of rural communities that have, like teen driver programs that teach young people how to drive, with big rigs or semi trucks. So can you partner with the teen driving program and try to incorporate active transportation into that curriculum? So it's not just driving, but it's also like, when you're out walking and rolling in your community, here are some other ways that you can, that you can be safe. So if you think of any others, I will let you know. And if anybody else has any other examples in the chat when it comes to rural communities, somebody just mentioned a park and walk. Again, so parking your vehicle, a few blocks away or a bit further away from the school campus and then walking the rest of the way. That's a great opportunity. And yeah, Rachel, I see you're on here as well. You just put some information from Massachusetts on here. And I know that we had you shared our webinars too. So that's another great resource to check out for high school engagement. And also, I think that the community in Maine that I talked about with the Rainbow Crosswalk there, it's a small town. I'm not sure if it's a rural community or not, but it is definitely a smaller community where students wanted to, kind of incorporate safety and diversity into their efforts. So it was like a small community that did that. Okay, someone said Ellsworth is definitely rural. Okay, excellent. Thank you. I don't always have the local context. I'm like, I think it is. I know it's small. Yeah, so that crosswalk project was in a rural community as well. And those students were, really effective in getting their project up and running. Any last questions before we wrap up for today? So the last thing I wanted to share before we wrap up is that we just launched a new resource that has actually all of these examples from that I talked about today are part of our new walking, riding, and rolling for a new generation, how to partner with youth on Safe Routes projects fact sheet. So this was just released and has a bunch of different youth engagement strategies, including examples of youth-led and youth-focused projects. So if you want, again, more information or links to some of the projects and programs that you've talked about, that's in this resource as well. So take a look at that. And Michelle just linked it in the chat box as well. Somebody else also in the chat just mentioned having high school drama classes, kind of like create traffic safety videos. Yes, so you're, the drama students, the theater kids, I'm sure have so many creative ideas when it comes to putting together, a traffic safety video or a PSA. It's just like getting creative and figuring out, who's out there. Like, is it the art, is it the art group? Is it a sports team? Is it the drama students? Like, who can you tap into? And again, kind of like connect it to what young people care about. So in the drama, the drama students, they, like theater, they like to perform. And so that can kind of be your in or your angle. Or if it's an environmental justice group at school, that could be your in, talking about how transportation is actually good for the environment and good for climate. So, that's how you really make it relevant. Like think about what kids are already interested in and then say, okay, well, how does transportation fit into that, priority area? So yeah, thanks for bringing up the drama students. That's a great idea that I didn't even think of. Alrighty, so we are just at about time. Thank you all so much for sharing your ideas and your expertise. There are a bunch of different resources dropped into the chat box as well. So I will make sure that I send those out in a follow-up email, along with anything else that might have come through the chat. I'll pour through it and see what you put in here. We have our new fact sheet that is out, so take a look at that. I'll send out a survey. Yeah, and I think that is it when it comes to youth engagements. This is the start of many conversations about this topic. We will definitely be back in the fall with more. And again, as you kind of like get your programs up and running and off the ground, please let us know what you're working on. Share your resources. This is just a very general overview of what this can look like. But the possibilities are really endless when it comes to working with high school students. So yeah, thank you all so much. I wish you all well on your high school engagement. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you hopefully in the fall with more high school engagement strategies. So thanks everyone, have a good one, and I will share follow-up materials shortly.